Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of Inside Chippewa Hockey. Today, we're going to take an in-depth look at the Men's Division III, Women's Division II, and Men's Division II teams. For now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Episode 4 starts right here, right now. Inside the Moore Hall Television Studios on the campus of Central Michigan University, we welcome you to episode 4 of Inside Chippewa Hockey. I'm your host, Michael Rosencrantz, and today we'll be taking an in-depth look at the Men's Division III, Women's Division II, and Men's Division II teams, respectively. We're going to lead off today with Men's 3. I am joined by CCHN broadcaster Reagan Cleaves and Central Michigan Men's 3 forward Josh Gilgren. Gentlemen, how are we tonight?
Doing well, you?
Yep. Doing very well. Thank you very much. And to start off, we're just going to go through each of the 4 previous games that Central Michigan has had over the past 2 weekends. Starting with the Oakland series. Josh, you head over to Buffalo Wild Wings Arena in Troy. Ultimately dropped that one 5-1, but find a way to come back on home ice 2-1 at Marty. How big was that win in that series for you guys?
Yeah, obviously that's huge, especially, being able to turn the tide so quickly. We dropped that game 5-1, but turned right around and have a really big win for us. So, yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Michael, another player that's really stood out, though he's only played a couple of games, has been Jace Johnson, the leading high school scorer in the state of Michigan last season, has really made an impact on this team in the first few games that he's played. He got his first goal against Oakland that proved to be the game winner late in that third period. And outside of that goal, he has been a very good player on the ice.
What was the message maybe after that loss 5-1, coming back home ice the next day to play against a clicking Oakland team?
Yeah, so obviously we know Oakland's hot right now, but all throughout the season, we've had a story where we've lost games that we shouldn't, and we're a way better hockey team than some people give us credit for. But it was all back to, just playing our hockey and knowing that we can win those games.
Then we move on to the ISU series, where you outscore the Redbirds 13-1 in that series. Reagan, just taking a look at your thoughts on your overall thoughts on that series.
Yeah, and this series sweep was the first for Central Michigan since the middle of November against Adrian, where, like the Redbirds, they swept the floor with the Bulldogs. This was really the continuation of that great play in that second game against Oakland, and furthermore, you had some great net minding from the likes of Caleb Woolery. That top line was really clicking for CMU. They had a combined 16 points in that ISU series. Just the play from the Central Michigan team has really taken the next step since that opening loss to Oakland to start the semester. Things have started to go pretty well for this team.
Absolutely, and goaltending, to your point, Reagan, has been outstanding lately. Caleb Woolery, he's only a freshman. He's 3 of 4 starts this semester, but he has had 3 straight wins. That's the longest streak for any Central Michigan goalie this year. And taking a look at some of the key players in this ISU series, Andrew Porzondek, he's been a big-time contributor for Central Michigan in terms of scoring. He had 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points total, almost netting himself a hat trick in the first game, I believe it was, against ISU.
Yeah, and this was something that we've been waiting to see from Andrew Porzondek for almost the entirety of the season. It's the first time he's had goals in back-to-back games all year. He led the team with points with 40 last season, and it's been a down year for him, but it's really good to see him get back into stride. And I know, Josh, you've been playing with him all year. How good do you think that his play has lent itself to this team?
Yeah, he's really turned it up a notch here. Kind of just in the beginning of the season, as a team, as a whole, we were in a bit of a slump, but we got some key players out right now, and then for the veterans in the locker room, like Andrew Porzondek, Nathan Bottles, Owen Campbell, it's really huge that they step up in these big moments for us, and ultimately help us out in the long run.
For sure. And another thing to point out really quick about Central Michigan, Connor Beamish, he had 2 goals of himself, but he's been great on the forecheck there. How is establishing a forecheck in these series just trying to establish rather than just a dump and chase kind of game?
Yeah, it's huge. Obviously, the less time the defensemen have is the better we profit off that. If we get some forechecks going, like, Connor Beamish, he's an animal on the forecheck, so that helps us out a lot, and, it causes confusion, causes turnovers, and it's up to us to capitalize on those opportunities, and we've been doing a really good job of that. So
going forward, what do you think are going to be some key strategies in your next series coming up against not only Northwood, but Michigan later in February?
I think mainly just sticking with our hockey. Like, we know we're a good team. We're relying on each other to make those big plays, and I think the more we can trust each other and, keep it simple and not trying to do anything too crazy, we'll be in good hands.
For sure, for sure. And Josh, you're from Atlanta, and coming here to CMU, I would think is a big adjustment in that Georgia's kind of a state, and correct me if I'm wrong here for sure, is kind of more known for obviously your football and basketball much rather than hockey. I mean, what was it like growing up in Atlanta playing hockey down in Georgia?
Yeah, no, you hit it right on the head. Obviously, hockey's not very big in Georgia. You see the same faces. You grew up with the same guys all the way from, at a young age all the way to high school, and it's very different. Obviously we don't even have an NHL team down there, so it's not, there's not really any market for it. That's why you see players develop in Georgia and go to bigger places like Minnesota, New York, Michigan, Chicago. So they breed hockey players, but we're not really known for that. So it's a big change for sure. You
went to Purdue Northwestern before you transferred to Central. What made that decision to transfer from Purdue to Central Michigan?
There's a lot of factors in it. I have no love lost for Purdue Northwest. I love those guys, love that program, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to some personal desires. As people grow, they want certain things, and it was kind of just we grew apart, and I've loved Central. This whole school has welcomed me with open arms, so can't thank them enough for that.
Josh Gilgren for Central Michigan. We'll step aside for now, but after the break, we'll take a look at the Division III rankings. More after this.
Chippewa hockey is on CCHN.
Oh my goodness!
The place to watch men's Division III.
Here's Connor Morgan out in front for Porzundiki scores!
And women's Division II.
Burnett's gonna get a shot and goal and she scores!
Every shift, every goal, every game.
Central Michigan has turned the corner.
All in one place. CCHN, your home for Chippewa hockey.
Welcome back inside Moorhall Television Studios. My name is Rain Cleaves, and it's time to take a look at the top 25 rankings in the ACHA's Men's Division III. So here are the rankings, number 25 to number 16. We start at the number 25 spot with UMass. They've got an 11-5 record. Taking a look up a couple spots, Miami has lost the most out of any top 25 team. They just beat FGCU, though, 2-1 in overtime on January 27th, so maybe they'll move up a couple of rankings come this next week. Kansas, in the number 23 spot, has had a very, very good season. Last year, they were 3-20. This year, at this point, they are 12-6. They've really had a good turnaround year. Sacred Heart is 15-1. Their only loss has come to number 8 Dartmouth. Their only top 20 game on their schedule, so they are 0-1 in that in games against the top 25. In number 21, we got Creighton at 6-1, just behind Notre Dame, who has had a tough season after finishing in the top 5 a year ago. They are 3-6-1 against their top 25 teams. They beat number 5 Hope, number 11 Calvin, and number 13 Michigan, but they split all of those series, so they do not have a sweep in the top 25. So again, a bit of a disappointing season. Thus far, at least for Notre Dame. They do have some time to climb back up into the top 16. Looking at the number 19 spot, we've got Dort at 18-3. They're 0-2 in their only top 25 games and those came against Missouri State. Up in the number 18 spot here with Central Maine Community College. They're a team that's really been a little bit surprising, especially this year, as we'll see in the rankings to come. A lot of East Coast teams and a lot of teams you don't normally see in the top 25, including CMCC, who sit at 13-3-2-0 with their biggest win coming back last weekend against Michigan State, 5-4 at Munn Ice Arena, so a big top 10 win for Central Maine Community College. At number 17, Missouri State, the only team in the top 20 with 10-plus losses. Their biggest win, though, was 6-3 against number 1 Arkansas back at the Jones Center a couple of weeks ago, and they're a team that pushed hard for a semifinal berth last year, but they came just short in their pool play. At number 16, we have Saginaw Valley State, the borderline team, as borderline as you can be in the top 16 right now. Again, the top 16 teams make it to the national tournament. They sit at 14-7, 3-2. They got a shutout against number 5 Hope at home earlier this season, and they are 2-6 against top 16 opponents. So only one other win outside of games against Hope for Saginaw Valley State. Now we move on to take a look at rankings 15-6. A lot of good teams here. You got Michigan at number 13 against Oakland at number 12. That's a big matchup this weekend. Two teams that haven't played each other this year. Not only does that series have MCHC implications in the East Division, but it also has some big implications on the national field. You got Oakland, who just lost to Central Michigan, as we talked about in a segment ago, and Michigan, a team CMU is going to have to play later on this weekend. Later on in this season, rather. At number 14, you got Colorado School of Mines, a bit of a surprise team, 17-3, though they have played very well this year. They've only had 2 games in the top 25, which including a 2-1 loss at number 8 Dartmouth and a 2-1 loss at number 6 Air Force. So 2 losses. Again, a lot of these teams later or further down in the rankings do not have a very good strength of schedule. A lot of weak conferences, a lot of weak teams that have played well, but they just don't have a lot of good games to boost them up into the top 10. Taking a look at Arkansas, they sit at 14-8. They're a team that has made the national tournament year on year. They made it to they were national runners-up in the 2021 campaign, bowed out in the semifinals 2 years ago against Hope, and last year failed to make it out of the pool play, but they have been a national contender for quite some time. They're a very good team to watch out for as we go down the stretch. Dartmouth sits at 13-1-0 in the number 8 spot. They are looking to make it back to the national tournament for the first time since it was last in St. Louis in the 2022 Natty. They sit at 13-1-0-1. They are a good team. They have a couple of series against some top 15 teams. They won and tied versus number 9 Colby, which sits right behind them, and they beat Colorado School of Mines, who sits at number 14, one of only 3 teams to do so this season. A surprise coming into this year is Michigan State. They're a team that hasn't really had a good season since the COVID break. They sit at 13-2-0-1. Their most recent loss came to Central Maine Community College at number 18 when they made a trip up. Not only did they split the series against Calvin, did Central Maine, they also knocked off Michigan State at Munn. Again, some upsets, and Michigan State has one of the toughest finishes to this season. They will take on not only number 1 Grand Valley State, but also the Flying Dutchman of Hope College at number 5. They have a very tough end to the season. We'll see how they do. Air Force, another perennial contender, 16-1-0 in the number 6 spot. They have only played 3 games in the top 25, but they're at this point pretty much a lock for the national tournament. They've beaten Dartmouth at number 8, Colorado School of Mines, and Missouri State in their 3 top 25 games. Now time for the top 5 in this week's rankings. You got Hope College, 17-4-1. Their most losses since the 1920 campaign, and it's been a bit of a down year for the Dutchmen, but last weekend they took on Grand Valley State in a home-and-home out on the west side of Michigan, and they split it. They handed Grand Valley their first loss this season in overtime, 1-0, before bowing out to them 2-1 the next night. So Hope, a team that's used to occupying where Grand Valley State is right now in the top spot, but they should be a good team come the national tournament time. They have been in the last 3 national championships. Looking at number 4, Missouri, in the highest spot they have been all year, 15-2-1 in the number 4 spot. They have won 12 of their last 13, with their only loss coming 8-5 at Arkansas at the Jones Center, which is a very tough place to play against a team that has dominated the MACHA for the last couple of seasons. So Missouri at number 4, Hope College at number 5, and in the number 3 spot, Lawrence Tech, a team that made the national tournament and the national semifinal for the first time a year ago, sit at 18-2-1-1, have not lost a ton this season. They swept defending national champions Michigan, number 12 Oakland, and Purdue, and their only losses have come to M2 Purdue Northwest and number 11 Calvin in their first 3 games. They also have a loss against Florida Gulf Coast and a tie scoreless against the Trine Thunder. So a bit of a weird year and some off games for Lawrence Tech, including a tie against Central Michigan way early on in the year. They will take on Saginaw Valley State to finish out their year. They sit at the number 16 spot, and Lawrence Tech sits in the number 3 spot. It's a rivalry, and it'll have some implications down the stretch. Now we take a look at the number 2 spot, Florida Gulf Coast. Again, another team that has constantly made the national tournament the last couple of years, but they have always had trouble getting through the national tournament. They haven't made a semifinal in the last 3 seasons. They are 15-1-1, and they just lost 3-2 in overtime to number 24 Miami, a big loss for Florida Gulf Coast, a team that plays a ton of games at home. It's hard for them to lose at Hertz Arena, but they did so this past weekend, splitting that series with Miami. And finally, in the top spot, Grand Valley State, 22-1-1. They've occupied this spot all year. Their first loss of the season was an overtime loss at Hope. They split the series. They had a tie earlier on in the campaign, and they will take on Michigan State this weekend, which is a great top 10 matchup to watch. Those are your ACHA Men's Division III rankings. Now back to the desk for a look at the Women's Division II team.
Thank you very much, Reagan. Now we're going to take an in-depth look at the Women's Division II team. I'm joined by CCHN's very own Ryan Donnelly and Central Michigan women's right winger Zoe Saudy. Folks, how are we doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, Zoe. Thank you.
It's January, it's second semester. We're all looking good. How about yourself?
Doing great, Ryan. Second semester going well for you?
It's going great.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're going to start really quick and talk about the Aurora series. You go out to Illinois, win the first game 2-0, but ultimately lose that second game 3-1. Was that split sort of in a mind sort of detrimental to what you had in mind going forward through the rest of the season?
Definitely. We wanted to come back from Aurora with 2 wins under our belt. Instead, we only had 1. So we knew we had to balance back in a way because, I mean, right now we're looking good in our rankings and everything, but every win counts.
What was happening primarily in that Aurora series that ultimately gave them the upper hand, primarily in that second game?
We just couldn't put the puck in the net. We struggled really hard putting that puck behind that goalie. She was making amazing saves. We kept hitting crossbars, missing the net, rebounds, and their defense were doing well, picking up our sticks, and we're struggling in that aspect.
And Zoe, Kylie Del Rey netted her 12th goal of the campaign in that 3-1 loss. But how has her leadership, continued to make a positive impact on this Central Michigan team?
Well, we were definitely down that game. She helped us stay positive during that game because watching them net 2 goals, because I think we scored the first goal and then they scored 2 and then get the third. It was really rough. We were trying to put them in the net, and her staying positive, cheering us on, really helped. Even Mac, Barnett, Leah, they were helpful. And even in any loss or any win, they're always there cheering us on, making sure we stay positive and on the game, and it's always really beneficial to us.
You would eventually split that series in Aurora, but we turn to the Ohio State series. What a series it was. Let's talk about the game on Saturday, the 4-0 shutout, the storybook of the night. Zoe Lawrence, the freshman goaltender, in her first career start, getting her first career shutout, saving 36 on 36. Ryan, that was special.
Yeah, Zoe Lawrence, the freshman out of Sterling Heights from the 586. We talked to a D2 player over the break, and she says that she fills in whenever the D2 goalies can't make it, and she's impressed in those practices. And there's a reason why she played great in the first game, saving 36 of 36, staying in the crease at all times. And then the second game, Bree Schroer filling in for Zoe Lawrence. Although she did give up 2 goals early on, she eventually saved the rest of the shots in the third period as they had a comeback win, which we'll talk about in a second. But man, goaltending has impressed early on in that Ohio State series.
Zoe, what was the overall message for Zoe as she skated out onto the ice for her first career start? What was the overall mojo going into that?
We wanted her to do well. Like, we wanted to bring her a win. We wanted to give her a first good start. Like, we haven't seen her start all season, so for her to start now, we were really excited, but we were also really nervous because this is her first time playing in her first college hockey game, so we were really anxious, but we just knew that we wanted her to play at the top of her game, and we wanted to make sure we were supporting her throughout the game and playing our best with her.
And the comeback against OSU on Sunday, what an incredible story that was.
Yes.
The team was down 2-0 going into the third period, rather. What was the message from Coach Haney in that locker room that led this team to get 4 unanswered goals to eventually win the game?
Don't give up. He told us we had a lot of work to do. He said that between the first and second, and then in the second and third, and that we had we had to work hard and not give up and stay out of the box. We had to ignore the refs because the refs it was rough with the refs that game, so we had to make sure we stay composed and ultimately just play our game, and we did.
Zoe Sauty with us. 3 goals, 7 assists on the year for her 10 points on the season. We're going to step aside for now, but when we come back, Ryan Donnelly will have the CCWHA rankings for you. Back in a moment.
Chippewa hockey is on CCHN,
Oh my goodness!
the place to watch men's Division III
Here's Connor Morgan out in front for Porzundiki scores!
and women's Division II.
Burnett's gonna get a shot and goal, and she scores!
Every shift, every goal, every game,
Central Michigan has turned the corner.
all in one place. CCHN, your home for Chippewa hockey.
Ryan Donnelly here inside the Moore Hall Television Studios, getting ready to tell you the Women's Division II rankings as of January 30th, 2024. Taking a look now at the West region, Assiniboine sits at the top, 13-1, 0-0 record. Dakota College and St. Thomas are slowly creeping up, and hopefully they can make noise in the national tournament. And the Northeast region, we have number 1 ranked Northeastern at an undefeated 13-0-0 record. Providence and Boston College are currently climbing up the rankings. And then in the Southeast, we have Villanova. Villanova at a 10-1-1-1 record. Naval Academy and Delaware are slowly climbing up the rankings in the Southeast region. Now taking a look at CMU's division, the Central region. Coming in at number 8, we have the Miami Redhawks, who are at a staggering 3-8-1. They played CMU back in October 21st and 22nd, where they were able to get the sweep. They stayed the same at number 8, and unfortunately, they have no scheduled games left for the rest of the year, so that is most likely where they're going to be sitting at the rest of the year. Coming in at number 7 are the Michigan State Spartans with an 8-4-0 record. They played CMU way back in October 6th and 7th, one at Munn and one at Martin. They fell one spot. They were at the 6th spot a couple weeks ago. Now they are at the 7th spot. They made nationals last year, but it looks like, based on these rankings, they will not be able to repeat this year. Coming in at number 6, the Aurora Spartans, coming in at a 5-4-0 record. They played CMU last week, January 20th and 21st split. They swapped spots with Michigan State from 7 to 6. This is the first time, their first year, their inaugural year as a Women's Division II team, and unfortunately they are not going to be competing for nationals due to them being a first-year team. Coming in at number 5, the Northern Michigan Wildcats, an 8-6-0 record. They unfortunately did not get to play CMU this year, and they are staying at number 5. They got one more series before their season ends against Loyola Chicago in February 9th and 10th Super Bowl weekend. Coming in at number 4, the Adrian College Bulldogs with a record of 9-3-0-0, and they stay at number 4. They have a tough stretch at the end of the year. They got to play Lawrence Tech, who we're going to be talking about in just a minute, on the 3rd and the 4th this upcoming weekend. CMU on Super Bowl weekend, 9th and the 10th, and then Michigan State, who is towards the bottom. They'll be playing them on February 17th and 18th. Speaking of the Devils, the Lawrence Tech Devils are at number 3 with a record of 12-8-0-0. They did fall one spot, CMU eventually taking that spot. And they did play CMU on November 17th and 18th with the split. Sophia Buckberger leading all the skaters for Lawrence Tech with 22 goals and 13 assists. And they, I believe, have the hardest schedule to close out the year. They got Adrian on February 3rd and 4th. And then they got to play Liberty University on the 9th and the 10th. And then they got a one-game stint against the Maryland Terrapins on February 11th. And then their final series of the year will be against Robert Morris on the 16th and the 17th. Coming in at number 2, we got the Central Michigan Chippewas at a 13-5 record. They went up the rankings from 3 to 2 in the last rankings. They had an incredible comeback win against Ohio State, like me, Michael, and Zoe mentioned a moment ago. Gabriella Nixon does lead the team in points, and they had a better start to the semester than they did last year. They're hoping to close out the year with a 4-0 record. They get to play Adrian, who is number 4, at Martin and at Arrington on the 10th and the 11th. And then they close out the year going into the round-robin tournament, playing against Loyola Chicago February 16th and 17th. And then coming in at number 1 are the Sioux College Cougars with a 16-1-0-1 record, staying at that number 1 spot. They are hoping to repeat as ACHA Women Division II champions. And their top 4 point scorers, Emily Moore, Emma Lee, Matria Land, and Marie-Pierre Lacou, all lead the CCWHA in points with 46, 43, 40, and 40. And unfortunately, they have no games left, so they most likely will stay at that number 1 spot. We're going to send it back to the desk where Michael Rosenkrantz will have John Gervasi, and we'll talk about the recapping of Men's Division II. So don't go anywhere. You're watching ICH.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And finally, we'll take a look at the Men's Division II team. I am joined by CMU Men's Division II broadcaster John Gervasi and D2 center Will Clark. Gentlemen, how are we tonight?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great, thank you.
Doing pretty good.
Good. And Will Clark, center from Saline, Michigan. Just tell us about, when did you start playing hockey?
So I grew up playing hockey. My dad put me on skates pretty early. He always coached me growing up. I started skating around when I was 5 years old, I believe, and then I grew up just playing hockey from there on out, and I never took a break or anything from hockey, so I've always been playing from five and up.
Plenty of years of experience for sure. And what has that experience been like here at Central Michigan over your 2.5 years here?
It's been great. Freshman year was my last full season here, just because sophomore year, last year, I was dealing with injury the whole year, and I didn't get to play too many games outside of the first little bit of the year. But my freshman year, I have a lot of memories from that, and that was a very fun year. Last year was still fun too, but a bit hectic, and this year hasn't been the best at times, but we tend to have a positive outlook on things, and I don't have any complaints. So,
taking a look at your guys' most recent series against Northern Michigan, Game 1 started off as a 6-3 loss. John, take us through that game a little bit.
When I tell you that that was the best first period I've seen out of this team all year. They were in the offensive zone. They were able to pepper the goalie. Unfortunately, it was a tough part to the second period. They went up 3-2 and then 4-2, and it's, defensive turnovers. Defensive turnovers kind of kill you in hockey if you're not careful. Logan Wolf, we've been waiting all year for him to kind of break out, and he had 2 goals. And I would say Joel Drucker had one of his best performances of the season in goal. Tough game. They fought till the very end, though. So, they made it. It was 6-2. They made it 6-3. Just couldn't get the bounces in the third period to tie the game up.
And taking a look at Game 2, another high-scoring game from both of these teams ended up being an 8-7 shootout loss. John, take me through that one.
That was the best offensive game that I think we've seen all year from this team, and I think Will can agree, that's the offense we've been waiting for all year.
we had 6 different Chippewa score. Joe Rizzo, Clark had a goal. Riley Joyce had 2. Gabe Benford, Brendan Bages, Frankie Williamson, Parker Chin had his first goal of the season. There were about 8 lead changes in that game. Came back. We were down 2 with 5 minutes to go in the third, and just an onslaught from Central. Will Clark here had the first, at least of this regime, the first shootout goal in D2 Chippewa history from what we know. And Dylan Niermeyer was a brick wall when he needed to be. You know, it's tough when there's a 7 on the board, but when Dylan needed to come through, especially in the shootout against a guy who has 50-something points on the season, Dylan stood tall and, just fell short 2-1 in the shootout.
Looking at the next 2 games for this Division II team, February 9th and 10th against Northern at home. And what's been kind of the message, Will, just kind of talking about when you talk about the confidence of this team going forward, and especially this series?
This past weekend, even though we came out 0-1-1 with that shootout loss, I think that was our best weekend of hockey we put together all year. So now that we're all clicking, the ball is rolling downhill, and I think Northern's going to have their eyes opened up pretty soon when we roll them. I feel very confident in our ability as a team, and I'm really hoping that we can pull off the win, because I know that we can, just with the chemistry we've been building, and I think we have the edge here.
Absolutely, and we wish you the best of luck in that Northern series. Now we're going to move on to the D2 Central rankings. We have the top 20 teams here in these rankings. John, if you wouldn't mind walking us through that.
So in the Central, it never changes year after year. It's Lindenwood, 23-6-2. They've been number 1 all year. They've been kind of flip-flopping with St. Thomas and Concordia University of Wisconsin. Then you got Iowa. The teams that we played, Sioux College at 17-3. And then Adrian, I think, only has 1 loss on the year. And then if you go to your other number 1s, Northeastern University, basically been number 1 all year. They've got wins over number 11 BC, number 9 BU, and number 4 UMass Amherst. And they split with number 2 New Hampshire their last series. In the Southeast is a team that I think everybody at CCHN knows very well, FGCU, the Division II team. They're 22-2-1. They won 2 of 3 against the number 1 Lindenwood. They swept number 3 Liberty University this year. They took 2 from number 4 Kentucky, and their toughest test yet, I think, is coming up against number 1 Northeastern in the Northeast region. And then out west, it's Montana State. It's been Montana State all year. They're 29-2. They're on a 7-game win streak, outscoring opponents 51-11. They outscored Eastern Washington 20-4 in 2 games, and Williston State College 20-1 in 2 games. So if I'm looking at teams, I would look out for FGCU and Montana State in the coming weeks.
Will Clark with us for Central Michigan Men's 2. John, thank you very much for hopping on here as well. Always great to see you and give your insight for the D2 team. We're going to send it to break one more time. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the Players of the Month and our final series preview. Don't go anywhere.
Chippewa hockey is on CCHN.
Oh my goodness!
The place to watch men's Division III.
Here's Connor Morgan out and quick Porzingis, he scores!
And women's Division II.
Burnett's gonna get a shot and goal, and she scores!
Every shift, every goal, every game.
Central Michigan has turned the corner.
All in one place. CCHN, your home for Chippewa hockey.
Welcome back to Inside Chippewa Hockey. I'm here once again with Reagan Cleves, Ryan Donnelly, and John Gervasi. We're going to take a look at each of these teams' Players of the Month. Starting with the men's Division III team, Reagan, you have 2 on the sheet here, Caleb Woolery and Owen Campbell. Talk to me a little bit about them.
Yeah, it was incredibly hard to decide between the two of them. Caleb Woolery, since the semester break, he's 3-0 in all 3 of his appearances. He has a .67 goals against average, a 40-plus save win against Oakland, who's ranked number 12, and a .980 save percentage. And in addition to his first career shutout, so he has been playing very well, and he's been the backbone to this D3 3-game winning streak. And also you got Owen Campbell, who is riding a 5-game point streak, the team's longest of this season. In that span, he's got 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points.
One of the other players that really stuck out to me, too, was the recent resurgence of Andrew Porzondek, getting the 4 goals, 2 assists for his 6 points. Was he another player that popped up in your head, Reagan?
Yeah, the line mate of Owen Campbell was certainly on that list, but I think it was really that 5-game point streak that drove Campbell over the edge and that led him to be my second player of the month.
Taking a look now at Women's Division II. The player of the month is Kylie Del Rey. She had 6 goals in the past 3 games, including a hat trick in the first game on OSU on Saturday. Ryan, take me through Kylie Del Rey.
Kylie Del Rey has been nothing but phenomenal. There's a reason why there's an A on her jersey. 6 goals in the past 3 games, 1 against Aurora, and then 5 against the last Ohio State. 3 goals in the first game as a hat trick, and then 2 in the second in that comeback victory against Ohio State at the total of 18 goals. Who is, I believe she now leads the team in goals ahead of Gabriella Nixon. She's been nothing but phenomenal for the Central Michigan team, and it's only going up for Kylie Del Rey, and she's only a sophomore as an associate captain, and who knows, we're going to see a lot more of Kylie Del Rey, and you're going to hear a lot more of Kylie Del Rey's name.
Kylie Del Rey could have very close to a 20-point season. I wouldn't be surprised if she notches a couple more tallies in this upcoming series.
I would not believe it either. I think we got Adrian next, which we'll talk about in a minute, but Adrian's a very tough team. Going into Arrington in the second game, that might be the game that she might get her 20th point, and I won't be surprised if she does. She has played just phenomenal. She had a record-breaking year last year, and then so far 6 goals in the second semester. She has played really well, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing her in the last 2 series.
It still blows me away that Kylie Del Rey is only a sophomore and she's producing numbers such as this, and she will be a great player going forward for the Central Michigan Women's Division II team. Now taking a look at Men's Division II, John, you also had 2 players of the month in Riley Joyce and Logan Wolf. Walk me through those.
Well, when both have 2 goals apiece and over the weekend series, it's hard to choose. You know, we've talked about Riley Joyce before. Last year, tearing his ACL and being out for the season. I think he tore it in maybe the 4th or 5th game. To watch him come back this year and come back as strong as he has, getting his 2 goals, he was laying the body against Northern. And then Logan Wolf, I mean, you talk about a kid who's been working his tail off all year. He was away from hockey for, I think, 2-3 years. Coming back this year, we were waiting for him to show up, and he showed up big in the first game. He took a penalty and immediately gets out of the box. Frankie Williamson hits him on a one-timer, and Logan Wolf gets his 2nd goal of the season. So going forward, those are 2 guys to really watch for. We had, other standouts, but, Joyce and Logan Wolf, those are 2 guys that we've been waiting for to kind of hit their stride.
A big thing that I took away from our conversation with Will Clark is even though that there's been many ups and downs for this Men's Division II team, they continue to have a positive outlook. And when you're doing these games, what's been kind of your analysis of their body language as they skate out onto the ice for each game?
It depends on the game, but the one thing we talked about it. The one thing that you can't say about this team is they don't fight. It doesn't matter if the score is, against Sioux 16-2. Or if it's 7-5 against Northern. They don't quit. And that's my favorite thing about this team. This season, we thought was just going to be, this is going to be growing pains this year. They don't quit. We talked about it when they played Michigan. There's 50 seconds on the clock and you're down, unfortunately 16-1, and you're still trying to put pucks in net. And I think that's my biggest takeaway this year is the way they fight in every game. They're building a team so that next year when they play, watch out. Next year is going to be a very good Division II team, but I think it's just growing pains. But I tell them every week I can't be prouder of them or more proud of them. And then, they play against Northern down 7-5 with 5 minutes to go, and they tie the game to send it to overtime. They continue to do things every week that impress me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, taking a look at the rest of the year coming up for all 3 teams, we'll transition back to Men's Division III. Friday and Saturday coming up, February 2nd and 3rd, at Northwood coming up. Northwood's been kind of hot name that's been rising up in the rankings and could potentially be a team to watch out for. Reagan, your thoughts?
Yeah, Northwood has been out of the league for the last 2 seasons, but this is their first, and this being their first season back since the 2021 campaign. And next year they're making the jump up to Division I. So this is going to be the only series in 3 years between CMU and Northwood in the Battle of M20. It's a historic rivalry. These teams have played each other a lot. CMU has certainly had the better of the two in recent years, but with Joe Cooper, a former Central Michigan Chippewa, now at the helm of that Timberwolves team, it'll be interesting to see how he does. They've had a couple of upset wins this season, and they're going to have that extra motivation coming back to Martin Ice Arena for their head coach. Now, for Central Michigan, this is their chance to extend their 3-game winning streak. They got the win against Oakland 2 weeks ago and then swept ISU this past weekend. So it's going to be a good opportunity for them to continue their winning ways, especially against a tough rival in Northwood.
Series after that is another tough one. This time back on home ice next Friday and Saturday. Michigan comes into Martin Ice Arena in the final 2 games of the regular season.
Yeah, it'll end up being a home and home. So we'll play the first game on Friday against Michigan at the Arctic edge of Canton, and that's been the site of some very close games between these two rivals. Again, down the stretch, Michigan doesn't play a ton of teams in division early on, so they tend to stack their schedule late. So we'll see how they do in these next couple of weeks. But they are always some tough competition for Central Michigan, and it's usually a really, really fun series.
You talk about close games. The one that comes back to me is Sam Kamara's overtime winner. I believe it was his second of the campaign at that time. I believe it was last year. But just taking a look at those close games, do you suspect that this game could potentially be another close one too? I mean, how's Michigan been looking this year?
I mean, they're doing pretty well. The defending national champions have had a little bit of a down year coming off their national title. They're ranked right around the middle of the pack. I think right about 13 or 14, but they usually use the end of the year to bolster their rankings as they get toward the end of the year, and they always get hot at the end of the year. They play a lot of good teams late, and they usually win those games. They've been to 2 out of the last 3 national championship games. Both of them played Hope. They're 1-1 in those. So the end of the year is the time for the Michigan Wolverines, and unfortunately for Central Michigan, that's where they fall this season on the schedule.
And then coming later after Michigan, of course, February 16th through the 24th is the MCHC tournament. Just kind of taking a look at things for Central Michigan. What do you suspect out of them going into this tournament?
Yeah, so most likely they'll finish right around the middle of the pack, 3rd or 4th in the division. They'll probably play a Michigan or an Oakland or a Saginaw Valley State in that first round. It's going to be a tough round to get by, but if they do, they're probably going to face a team like Lawrence Tech, or which will be the top team in the division come the end of the year. You're certainly looking, if you're Central Michigan, to get back into the swing of winning games in the MCHC tournament. You were bounced in the first round last year against Oakland with a tough loss, and then the year before that you ended up making it to the semifinals where you had a tough 6-0 loss to Hope. So, and this is a team that only 5 years ago won the MCHC tournament, clinched the Vezina Cup. So it'll be interesting to see how Central Michigan fares in that tournament, especially with some tough competition.
Hopefully Central Michigan can use some of that momentum later in the season to fuel the fire for the MCHC tournament. Now we're going to move on to Women's Division II, just kind of taking a look at their upcoming series. More difficult opponents. Ryan, first up is Adrian.
Adrian is going to be very tough. They're number 4 in the CCWHA Central, about 2 below Central Michigan. They've been consistent all year. Although they've played a lot of tough opponents, Central Michigan is playing a home, one at Martin, and then the other one at Arrington Ice Arena on Super Bowl Sunday. It's going to be tough. Arrington's a very hard place to play. I was fortunate enough to go down with the men's team about a couple months ago, and it's a very tough and loud atmosphere down there, and Central Michigan knows how to come back from adversity, and I would expect a very tough and a very physical and a very close series between the Bulldogs.
And carrying over to the Loyola series as well, I definitely think these 2 series are must-haves for Central Michigan. And how do you think that they can use the momentum from Ohio State this series going forward?
Well, I think the momentum started after their second game against Aurora. They just kept on rolling. You saw that comeback game against Ohio State, but we don't know how the Adrian series has played out because they haven't played them yet. Maybe that momentum after Adrian will roll into a Loyola team that has been struggling a lot this year. They're towards the bottom of their division. But who knows? This is sports we're talking about. Anything could happen. And Loyola might give them a run for their money, or Central Michigan, talking to Zoe Sauty off camera, once they hit their first goal, they're just rolling. And Loyola is known for having not really good goaltenders. They could get hot really early, and that's something that Central Michigan has done really well so far this year.
And finally, taking a look at the men's Division II team, kind of briefly went over it with Will Clark on with John. February 9th and 10th as well versus Northern. Taking a look at that upcoming series, John, how do you think the boys can do there?
I'll tell you right now, I feel like it's tougher for Northern than it is for us. We played them this past weekend. We get a week off. Northern has 2 against us, and then they get to play Sioux College. So they get to find out what we found out about when playing Sioux. And then they get us next week. So, playing Sioux is not fun. I mean, it's great hockey. It's fun watching them, but I don't know if Northern's really going to be able to put up the points to hang with Sioux. And, we're kind of waiting in the wings for them. You get to play Sioux, and then you're coming up to Martin Ice Arena. I think that this can be the start for us to get our first, 2 wins of the season. The boys are going to play hard. The confidence is at an all-time high, and you get these 2 wins, and then you're looking at Eastern and Concordia of Ann Arbor in our outdoor game. Hey, we get these 2 wins. We have a chance to finish this season very, very well on a high note, and I think that's what they're looking for. They've had great weeks of practice. I talked about it with the dads on the dads trip. They got to learn how to win. They've had leads, and they've been down, but they haven't won a game yet. And I think once they get that first win, then the season's going to start to come together and roll into next year. But they got to learn how to win first.
And just kind of finally, briefly, as the regular season comes to a close, I just want to get all 3 of your thoughts on the overall seasons for each of these teams. Reagan, we'll start with men's 3.
Yeah, for M3, it's been a little bit of a down year for them. They most likely are not going to make the national tournament, which for what would have been the 5th consecutive year. But it's certainly been a rebuilding year. You've built a good foundation, especially through the last couple of series, and it's certainly building blocks to go forward.
Ryan, how about women's Division II?
Women's Division II has it's going to be nothing but up from here. You got a phenomenal new group of fresh faces. This freshman class has been playing unbelievable. Just a great record, and going into the pool play tournament in a couple weeks, they're going to be surprising a lot of people, and don't be surprised that they'll be one of the sleepers in the national tournament in St. Louis. It's only going up from here.
And John, your final thoughts on the men's 2 team?
Just 2 words. Keep fighting. Never quit. It's been tough, but they continue every game to keep fighting in every game. And like I said, I couldn't be more proud of this team.
Well, that will just about do it for us on episode 4 of Inside Chippewa Hockey. We want to thank Reagan Cleaves, Ryan Donnelly, and John Gervasi for joining us today. Thank you to Josh Gilgren, Zoe Sauty, and Will Clark for their time here today, and for all of our production crew in the studios of Moore Hall Television. I'm Michael Rosencrans for everybody else here at CCHN. Have a great night, everybody.